I think state government plays a huge role in encouraging innovation. One of the things that sets California apart is the non-enforcement of non-compete agreements, which is really critical, something I sort of highlight in the book as something that's distinctive. Again, it was not...
Wasn't intended.
No, it was like some sort of 19th century artifact. So I think there's actions that can be taken at the state level. Look, there's tax expenditures and tax incentives have been a really important way for policymakers to sort of affect a de facto industrial policy. And generally speaking, I think putting the thumb on the scale of innovative, fast-growing industries is proved to be quite generative. I think that one thing that at the federal level, so that can happen at the state level and that can happen at the national level, and I think investment in research at the state level too. I think one thing that's happened over the last 40 years in Washington, D.C. is there's been this dissolution, cutbacks and disempowerment of technical expertise in the federal government. And so that has resulted in, and some of you in your room may have experienced this frustration, especially if you work in kind of the legal side of things, where there's this incredible imbalance between what the regulators understand and what the people in tech understand. And that is dangerous because in a pro-regulatory environment, that can lead to ineffective or harmful regulation. So there was the Office of Technology Assessment. There was at the congressional level, there's sort of been this diminution of presidential science and technology advisorships. But even within the Pentagon, there are tons and tons of really smart technical people. And of course, DARPA continues to be a powerhouse. But they're really, oftentimes they're like yelling and no one's listening. So there's been this real marginalization of expertise in Washington that's been going on since the Nixon administration. And it's been a bipartisan project. And oftentimes it's an easy thing to cut budgetarily. But as we're going into the next decade, whether you like it or not, this is a new regulatory environment because of the bigness and the scope of the biggest of the companies. And restocking the pond so that when there's a congressional hearing, you have staff that are, just have a more critical mass of staff. I mean, I think, the people who do have that expertise on hand, either themselves or in their staffs, are clearly approaching this in a much more nuanced and I would argue a more productive way. You look at someone like Mark Warner, who was in the industry and also has kind of hired people who have that expertise. It's hard though, because look, especially the biggest companies, can pay so much more than government service. So this imbalance, but there's a real, I think, as much as even the most diehard opponent of regulation, I think I would hope agree that having smart people on the other side of the negotiating table so you can have a productive conversation rather than a politicized one is going to be extremely important.